flute wasn't always cool. I was doing classical music and I loved it until I was about a teenager, and I was starting to wonder if, like, is that it? Like, I don't know if classical flute's the thing for me. And I found things like Jethro Tull, or I got into the jazz band, and these were cooler. So I'm on a mission now that I have this sweet flute career and I get to play the flute all the time, to make flute cool, to make kids want to play the flute. Fourth grade, I could join the band at school, and I thought that was really cool, and I begged my mom for an instrument, and we didn't know anything about instruments, and so we looked in the brochure and we chose the flute together, and I loved it. I couldn't believe I talked my mom into getting me an instrument, and I loved it. I didn't know anything about the flute. I showed up to band and we didn't learn anything, man. We learned to play one note, and then the next week we learned another note, and I was so frustrated. I begged my mom for lessons and I got them, and the lessons that I got turned out to be Suzuki lessons, where you learn to play by ear. And I had already learned to read music already by this time in band, but my focus with this teacher was just learning to play by ear. As I continued with music, I found a flute teacher that put me really on a classical path. Sonatas and concertos, chamber music with flute and piano, full program type things. But I had learned to play by ear, and so I had this whole other thing going on where I was just jamming out on the flute. It was just music. I could hear all the cartoons, I could hear all the movies that were around me, and I could just pick up my flute and play these tunes because I learned to play by ear. I didn't think much of it. As I got older, even in high school, I got into the jazz band in high school because I taught myself how to play a C blues scale, and I could kind of just rip a little in C, and I had a lot of fun with it. I made it to conservatory, and I was shocked, I tell you, to find out that there were only a handful of people in my entire school that played music besides classical music. It was only classical music there, and I couldn't believe it. I'd never actually been around that before. It turns out this is not unusual. This is usual, that in the classical community, not a lot of people rock out or switch instruments or take their instruments on the street and go party. So I, met the only other people at school that were into this stuff. These people now are in my group with the Project Trio. Peter Seymour on bass, Eric Stephen on cello. And we were always drawn to these other sounds of our instruments. And as we got out of school and kind of went our own ways, for me, I quickly lost track of the classical ideal. I didn't get a job. I was just teaching. And so I kind of started over and reinvented myself. I was able to use my ears and meet beatboxers. And I was backing up street poets in San Francisco and trying to make my flute less lyrical and more rhythmic. And so that's how I came across beatbox. I've been doing a bunch of bluegrass type stuff in Cleveland with all these finger pickers and stuff like that, these mandolin guys. So I had all this, these like hillbilly kind of like bluegrass jams. And so it didn't take much to turn it into beatbox. It was just like a couple steps removed. Check it out, everybody say boots. Boots. Now boots as a beat in beatbox would be like right. The next word is cats. Everyone say cats? Cats. Cats as beatbox sounds like this. Great, and our third word, or mnemonic, is barbecue, and that sounds like this. Right, that's a classic Queen song right there. Okay, you put those together, and you get an extremely strange flavor, but a fresh lick. And this is what I used to practice to myself, teaching myself how to beatbox, and then applying it to the flute. And it's boots, cats, barbecue. Sounds like this. I moved to San Francisco having never been there before. I kid you not. I grew a goatee and I went to try and find like beatnik homies in my idealized San Francisco brand, you know, dun 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 dun, and then blew out the candle, you know, and I was like, that's what I wanted. You know, I had a little muted trumpet playing. I was like, I want to find like cool poetry dudes and just like put on sunglasses and play flute. I found them. Like I found a crew, and every Thursday night at 16th Street and Mission, above a BART station, we would have this open mic, and everyone would come, and it was super high energy. There was no sign-up list. Whoever kind of got on stage got to go next. And so everyone was just crowding the stage, vibing everybody. As soon as they were done, you'd run on stage. And there was a big collaborative part of it. So during the week, we would meet with these different heads and work up something for the street that we were going to do that night. Make everyone go, oh, you know, this kind of whole thing. And this is how I met my lady out there. She was a poet. And we used to just like make creative things. And we would do these concerts too. We would get everyone together. And so I was really... When I first showed up, I was like, hey guys, you're really cool, man. You guys mind if I bring my flute? And everyone kind of rolled their eyes a little bit, you know, they were like, oh man, I guess so. And like, I was like, no, I'll make it like real funky. I'll make it really high energy. And it worked. I believe fundamentally it's a lifestyle, you know. People ask me even how much I practice every day, and I say the answer is every day. Okay, that's different for everybody. Practicing is fixing problems, and so you can only do it for how long you can pay attention to your problems and fixing it. And if you're not paying attention, you instill bad habits and you're making problems. So that means you have to practice practicing. Okay, you have to practice to get the stamina to practice, all right? It's a mental game. Not a lot of people can practice for an hour straight and be mentally focused through that whole time, but you can learn to do multiple hours, but you need to learn to take breaks, and you need to know when you're tired. But practicing is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is performance. You have to perform, you have to practice, but you need to practice performing too. And I know a lot of folks growing up that would recitalize. This is how they would perform. They would do a recital once a year. They would get all ready and do one performance. And then the next year they would do another performance. But if you're a musician, I believe you should be performing as much as possible. And you try to balance that with not performing in a bad way as much as possible. So, you know, a lot of people don't want to step out and perform because they feel like they're not ready. I hear a lot about improv. I'm not ready. I don't know what I'm doing. I make too many mistakes. But the only way to learn to do that is to do it. It's the only way to do it. So I found playing in the street, playing in the subways, or busking as it's called, is a great way to practice practicing. No one's there to see you. No one cares about what you're doing. If you find a safe place, people leave you alone, and you kind of set up like a spider, and you weave your web, and you hope people just walk in and kind of check you out a bit. And if you're paying attention, you can use that as a tool. You can know if your music actually has an impact on people. Like if you're really getting into someone's mind, you will notice that they start walking the tempo you're playing. You know, you can you can get your music in there if you do it right. And you can make guesses. You know, you see an old person, you play like an old song. You play a young person, you play a young song, something like this. There are different games you can do to kind of get people to acknowledge you're playing. You know, on the stage, always the performer has to go overboard to show the audience dynamics or slowing down or rubatos, these things. We have to like telegraph it for the audience to see. And on the subway, it's really easy to tell if people are paying attention to you. If if they're feeling exactly what it is you're trying to do. So I use the subway as a practice tool. I try to go there at least once a week. I live in New York, so it's very easy. I drop my daughter off at school. I go play on the subway for 30 minutes. And usually, you know, you can make lunch money too. You know, if you want to make money with it, that's fine too. And it's a lot of fun. It's fun burning CDs and making a sign and trying to be a business guy about it. But actually, it's a little less engaging for the musician inside of you, because to make money, what happens is you end up playing the same money-making tune over and over and over again. So I found that to be, and found at a young age that to be totally important to my playing, to practice performing.